Well, I'm going to do a little more complex review today of actually a lot of different things, mostly regarding Gene Roddenberry and Star Trek. And this will be pretty complex, and I will have to consult my notes from time to time, and which will essentially just be the review that I will be posting with this video. I'm calling this Gene Roddenberry versus Misguided Philosophies, or All I Needed to Know I Learned from Star Trek's first 2 seasons, his Genesis 2 movie, and Andromeda's first 2 seasons. So this will be a discussion of Gene Roddenberry, and I will just be sticking with season 1 of Star Trek because that is available in several places, Pluto, and a couple other spots which I'll have links to in the review. Unfortunately, Roddenberry lost all control over Star Trek original series after the first 2 seasons, and the rest of Star Trek after the first season of Star Trek Next Generation. He did manage to produce Genesis 2 and Planet Earth made for TV movies. That was in the 1970s. Majel Roddenberry, a decade after Gene's death, took his concept notes and created the Andromeda SF TV series through 2000 to 2005. The first 2 seasons are very good. The best writer who studied all of Roddenberry's notes, his name, I think his name was Robert Hewitt Wolf, and I'll have that later on, really followed what Roddenberry thought. And the first 2 seasons of Andromeda are very good, and then he was removed for more popular science fiction, I suppose. And I have noticed over the years, especially since the late 1960s, when The Outer Limits was dropped, Twilight Zone was gone, The Wild Wild West was gone, Star Trek was gone, the TV fare was nowhere near as good after 1968. A.E. Van Vogt's philosophical thoughts in The World of Null A, Slan, The Voyage of the Space Beagle, and the Mixed Men novels seem to have seriously influenced Roddenberry. The first aired episode of Star Trek, The Man Trap, is essentially a rewrite of Van Vogt's Golden Age kickoff short story, Black Destroyer. And I have my facsimile copy of Black Destroyer right here. This is one of my most prized possessions. Finding a copy of this in magazine form in any kind of shape is very hard. This was produced by Astounding and let's see, copyright 1981. I actually have 2 copies of it. And this was printed in the United States of America. Most of the copyright were Street and Smith, who produced Astounding and Analog, and then Condé Nast, who produced Analog after roughly 1960, I believe. This book version of Astounding magazine is really good, and I enjoy it immensely. Here we have the contents. You have A.E. Van Vogt, C.L. Moore, Isaac Asimov, and Nelson S. Bond. Isaac Asimov's Trends appears in this magazine with A.E. Van Vogt's Black Destroyer, which is widely considered to be the beginning of the golden age of science fiction. There's other stuff in here that they actually have illustrations Here is the illustration for Black Destroyer. There are others scattered throughout here. But you guys have heard me discuss descriptive prose. And A.E. Van Vogt, Ray Bradbury, Keith Laumer, a lot of the earlier science fiction writers were really good at it. And I thought I would read just the first 2 paragraphs of Black Destroyer. On and on Kourou prowled. The black, moonless, almost starless night yielded reluctantly before a grim, reddish dawn that crept up from his left. A vague, dull light it was, that gave no sense of approaching warmth, no comfort, nothing but a cold, diffuse lightness, slowly revealing a nightmare landscape. Black, jagged rock and black, unliving plain took form around him, as a pale red sun peered at last above the grotesque horizon. It was then Kourou recognized suddenly that he was on familiar ground. Now, I have very little trouble visualizing that scene, and I don't think most people would. Now, here's a passage from Korita, the ship's commander, after Kourou has tricked them into letting him aboard the spaceship, and he has started murdering people, and they don't understand what's going on. So Korita, their historian, expounds on what he thinks is happening. He discusses how civilizations have fallen in the past, and then says, "You may ask, Commander, what has all this to do with your question? My answer is, there is no record of a culture entering abruptly into the period of contending states. It is always a slow development, and the first step is a merciless questioning of all that was once held sacred. Inner certainties cease to exist, are dissolved before the ruthless probings of scientific and analytic minds. The skeptic becomes the highest type of being. I say that this culture ended abruptly in its most flourishing age. The sociological effects of such a catastrophe would be a sudden vanishing of morals, a reversion to almost bestial criminality, unleavened by any sense of ideal, a callous indifference to death. If this being is a descendant of such a race, then he will be a cunning creature, a thief in the night, a cold-blooded murderer who would cut his own brother's throat for gain." So that is the beginning of Black Destroyer. I do include a link to a free site to read the entire short story with the illustrations, and the way it appeared before it was altered a bit for appearing in Voyage of the Space Beagle. So all of Van Vogt's major books and things definitely had an impression on Gene Roddenberry, and I can show you guys why I think that here in a little bit. This is my copy of Triad, The World of Null A, The Voyage of the Space Beagle, and Slan. And here we have A.E. Van Vogt's The Mixed Men. In this book you have transporters, telekinesis, telepathy, basically supermen who were created accidentally through a malfunction of the transporter to begin with, and they become a kind of a separate race. And the mixed men are people who are born between the Delian supermen created by the transporter and normal humans. And the Delian supermen do have telepathy and greater strength. In this book, there is a very strong female presence. The commander of the Earth battleship that is Starship, and it's also a starship, that is sent out exploring, finds these folks who have created their own culture and civilization outside of Earth's influence. And this captain, her name is Gloria, she really has a powerful personality and is actually a very decent person. And her goal is all humans need to be under the very loose, not control, a little bit of control, but governance and influence of Earth. She has set things that she and Earth feel are basic needs for all human beings. There can be no slavery. There's a minimum wage. Nobody can be suppressed. And that's all she asks. Of course, the Lost Worlds don't want anything to do with that and want to remain independent. So that is the crux of this book. But you can certainly see the Star Trek influence there. So here I will read this. Roddenberry, a World War II combat veteran who experienced the global disaster caused mostly by the Nietzsche-studying socialist Hitler, Mussolini, and Lenin, Stalin, plus the Feudal Japanese Empire, seems to concentrate his educational efforts on Nietzschean philosophy. But he mentions Spinoza too. That connects nearly all of modern philosophy: Kant, Hegel, Camus, Sartre, Marx, Ayn Rand, etc. A lot of SF since the 1950s appears to embrace both Marxist and Nietzschean philosophy. However, this is inconsistent and irreconcilable. Supposedly, Marxism rids us of the haves and have-nots, no discrimination of any kind. This is the opposite of Nietzsche and his noble higher men, who are basically egomaniacs, whom Nietzsche and his childlike imaginary friend Zarathustra felt their self-created ethics supposedly transformed them into the ultimate human beings. Now, this seems more like terrible two toddler tyrants with no parental guidance to me. These tyrants then amassed wealth and power, practiced feudalism, serfdom, mass murder, as evidenced by so many, the Soviets, Red China, North Korea, Cuba. It's just a mess. But mass murder, slavery, free trade, any crime imaginable. Philosophy and ideology appear to me to be the main causes of human disaster, not technology. My community tab on philosophy will contain more on this topic. Back to Roddenberry, whom I was fortunate to meet at a showing of the first pilot of Star Trek, Captain Pike's show, as he spoke with a group of local SF fans in 1974. All of Star Trek first season is available on Pluto for free as of 1/10/25, so I use season 1 here. The first episode that I think would be of interest to people studying philosophy and Gene Roddenberry and what Star Trek was originally about is Where No Man Has Gone Before, Season 1, Episode 3. This certainly appears to be a criticism of Odd John and the like, Childhood's End, etc. Through no fault of his own, possibly, Officer Gary Mitchell is transformed into a Superman, with absolute power corrupting absolutely. Dr. Daner is also affected, but is able to maintain her moral compass long enough to help Captain Kirk. This is a great exploration of Superman capabilities by Roddenberry here. The next episode that I'm asking people to take a look at is The Squire of Gothos, Season 1, Episode 17. I feel this may be a criticism of Nietzsche himself. Trelane waylays the Enterprise with technically aided telekinesis, teleportation, and various other powers. He is constantly looking in the mirror, his power coming from looking at himself, a very Nietzschean trait, since they create their own morals and ethics out of thin air. He turns out to be a spoiled brat whose parents finally show up. They do not discipline him, just saying, play pretty with your pets. A terrible toddler forever. Third, Space Seed Season 1, Episode 22. Great episode with typical Nietzschean arrogance, egomania, selfishness, and immaturity. Khan returns kindness with aggression, theft, attempted murder, and dictatorship. Spock and Kirk's questioning of Khan is a lesson in civilization. The themes in this episode are explored in greater detail in the first 2 seasons of Andromeda 34 years later. Now, I have my DVDs of all this stuff. Here is one of my Star Trek cases. And you can see Where No Man Has Gone Before here. And I also have, I have 2 copies of the first season. Some of them with the enhanced special effects. And over here is The Squire of Gothos. Great episode. A lot to pick up there. A lot of subtle hints on things. And here we have Space Seed. Space Seed discusses eugenics, incredible egomania, aggression, arrogance. It's all right here. So that I strongly recommend. Now we'll move on to Genesis 2, airing March 1973 and produced by, of course, Gene Roddenberry. Starring Alex Cord as Dylan Hunt, the first time we see this Roddenberry character. Many actors carry over from Star Trek in this film. Now, this film came after the great dumbing down of US TV. I mentioned before, Twilight Zone, Outer Limits, Combat, Wild Wild West had all been gone for years. It was high concept and gong show time. Probably why the plot has some juvenile qualities. NASA engineer Dylan Hunt is testing suspended animation when war strikes. His capsule he's in while he's doing the test is buried under rocks, and he is trapped in there for 200 years. So he is discovered 200 years later by Pax, a group of NASA-descended pacifists still living in this underground facility. Pax is in conflict with the Tyranians, obviously a play on tyrant, a group of mutated through the atomic war and supposedly superior humans. In this movie, watch for various kinds of philosophical concepts. They are usually brief interludes, but they are noticeable if you're looking for them. The movie is available on YouTube, upgraded to HD, and it is a really good HD upgrade. And on the Creature Features channel. The Creature crew is very funny. They do interrupt the show a lot and do silly things, and they have a good time. But you can still watch the show without any problem. I include a link to that on YouTube, and you can watch it. I really recommend it, if nothing else, just for the historical attributes of the show. Next is Andromeda SF TV show. 5 seasons, 2000 to 2005. Kevin Sorbo is the next incarnation of Dylan Hunt. Majel Roddenberry, a decade after Gene's death, took his concept notes and created the Andromeda SF TV series. Robert Hewitt Wolf took Gene's notes and ran with them. The first 2 seasons are excellent. Nearly all episodes of the first 2 seasons have a philosophy lesson, besides being outstanding science fiction. This show starts out with the very first show. The main characters, Dylan Hunt and his crew, are members of the Commonwealth, a transparent analogy to the United States of America, and they're in the battle with the Nietzscheans. And during the battle, Dylan tries to outrun the Nietzschean fleet by getting too close to a black hole and the event horizon. Well, he crosses the event horizon, and there's a Nietzschean on board the ship that attempts to kill him at this time, that he thought had been basically trained to be a decent person. So they are then caught in this event horizon and are stuck in there for 300 years until a junk recovery ship comes by and tries to salvage the ship. So that's the prelude to the story. And Dylan Hunt has sent all of his crewmen out before they got too close to the event horizon through escape capsules. He and the ship's AI are the only beings left on board when they are pulled out of the black hole by this salvage vessel. So that's the setup for that. And one of the main characters, Tyr, T-Y-R, like Tyrant, played by Keith Hamilton Cobb, is a member of the Nietzschean, I wouldn't even call it a government, the Nietzschean mob. A very large population of, and there are a very large population of genetically engineered, not quite eugenics, they are genetically engineered, humans who think they are not humans, and they are all self-centered anarchists. And their very loose and contentious feudal warlord style of government leads to many battles and conflicts within their own, which Dylan has a hard time understanding. Highly recommended, and all seasons free on YouTube. It's also on Pluto and others, and I include a link to it on YouTube here, but you can watch it on Pluto for free. And that's about all I have today. So I'm going to head out. My voice is a little hoarse because I tried to practice this so I could speak this a little more fluently, but I don't know how well I did. Let me know in the comments. And again, I hope everyone is doing well. And this is something for people to think about. And again, I do not monetize my site at all. I feel that science fiction is something that should be discussed freely, and the free trading in ideas I absolutely agree with and support. Thanks again.